They're not there, and her car is in the driveway. I want to know where my son's at.
Okay.
I want to know where my son and his girlfriend are at. I want to know if they got abducted by whoever tried to assault them and rob them. And it's pretty funny that this girl named Tiffany, which is there right now by the residents, waits 2 hours to call somebody and report this.
Okay. Well, like I said, we were out there. There was nothing going on there.
Okay. Where is my son and his girlfriend, and her car's in the driveway?
How would I know that, ma'am?
I'm Jean Casares of In Session in for Nancy Grace. Johnny and Lisa, they were so in love, 20, 21 years old. Lisa was beginning nursing classes to be a nurse, and Johnny was training to become a barber. Their bodies were found with duct tape around their hands, around their wrists, and a paper sack, plastic bag over their head with duct tape around the neck. Cause of death, asphyxiation. We're taking your calls live tonight. Cindy in Ohio. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, Jean.
Thank you for calling.
I was wondering if they had any chance of escaping this at all, or if somebody's after them, or if they was on cell phones when they made those 911 calls.
Good question. To C.W. Jensen, retired Portland police captain, joining us from Portland, Oregon. They didn't have any way to escape. That's what I say, because of how the bodies were found.
Yeah, based on the description, it would seem that there was certainly more than one person that came in, confronted these two young people, and, you know, then God knows what happened over that course of time. I'm sure it was frustrating for the police officers to get out there. I've gone on many calls like this in the past, and you go and you're really limited on what you can do to go inside a house. You've really got to be able to articulate a problem. I think it's strange that this girl goes to the house, sees some things that disturb her, and she calls the mother instead of calling the police and being there to be able to explain what she sees in the house that's suspicious.
And waiting 2 hours to do anything. We hear that on the 911 tape. To Pat Brown, criminal profiler, we did some legal research to look at what the legal standard is in Ohio, and it is an objective, reasonably based standard that someone in the house may need aid or attention. That allows officers to go in. That wasn't done on 2 repeated 911 calls.
Well, that is, I mean, I'm a little concerned about that myself, because there was clearly an indication that, as long as they believe this girl anyway, and what her phone call stated, that a stranger, there are strangers, and I believe there's more than one, strangers had gotten into the home that these two people did not know, and they felt threatened, and then these two people no longer answering the door or left the home. So I think there would be more reason. I take a little bit more time looking around as best I could, like the parents eventually did, peeping in everywhere to make sure there wasn't something going on in there.
Let's go to the lawyers. Joey Jackson, defense attorney out of New York. John Manuelian, defense attorney, joining us tonight from Los Angeles. Joey Jackson, do you realize that the police, in coming there 2 different times, the first time they stayed, I think, 11 minutes, the second time they came 30 minutes, they knew that the 911 call said that the son had said, "Who are you? Why are you here?" And it's the family that had to find the bodies with the plastic bags over the heads?
This is a horrific circumstance, by all means, Gene. I mean, listen, in terms of probable cause or objective standard, whatever you want to call it, there's more than ample here. You have a phone call to 911 repeatedly by the mother. You have the girl who's describing the friend who's saying it's ransacked, the lights are on, you have the car there, and they're not there. It's problematic. And even if you say there was no objective, credible reason or probable cause, Gene, what about an exigent circumstance? Something needed to be done. Something needed to be done immediately, and it wasn't done, and it's unfortunate. And I hate to besmirch the character of our members in blue. They protect us. They keep us safe, but something is amiss.
You know, Joey, I respect the police. I love the police. I applaud for what they do every day of our lives to protect us. But John Manuelian, there is plain view to look in a window to see what has happened. Now, we understand the family had to boost the cousin up on the shoulders of the father of Johnny to look in and see the bodies, but yet it was able to be done.
Yeah, it was, but you got to understand something, and I'm not trying to defend anybody at this point, but we don't have the police reports. We don't know what they did. It's easy to start judging them at this point. It's way too early in the investigation. They were there twice, one for 11 minutes, the other one for 36 minutes. I'm sure they did do all of the obvious things like checking the windows and so forth, and I'm sure if they saw the house was ransacked, they would have went in.
911.
Oh my God, we just called the police here.
On Longacre?
Yes, but we need a rescue coming. He's got a bag over his head.
Okay.
Oh, we can see through the window, please.
We've got them on their way already, okay?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Stay on the line. I'm going to transfer over to you. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, what did your son tell her?
My son was like, hey, Tiff, we're on our way out the door. We're coming to get you. And then all she hears is the phone drop and my son Johnny saying, who are you? What do you want? What are you doing here? Who are you? And no more answers. That's all she hears. And then she says that she starts getting worried because neither of them are answering the phone. And she goes out there by the house and she sees all the lights are on and the cabinets look ransacked.
I'm Jean Casares of In Session, in for Nancy Grace. A young couple in Ohio, they weren't only murdered, they had their wrists bound with duct tape. They had plastic bags over their head with duct tape to secure them so they would be asphyxiated. We're taking your calls live tonight in Dale in California. Hi, Dale.
Hi, Jean. This is very upsetting that the family had to find these people.
It is. It definitely is. To C.W. Jensen, retired Portland police captain, I know it's difficult to make these calls and to make these judgments, but if it is an objective, reasonable man standard that security may be an issue or even a welfare check, it just seems as though something more could have been done. Don't know if it could make a difference, so in reality it may not matter, but in principle another time it could.
Well, I can tell you from my experience, sometimes it's really frustrating because you do want to go into a residence, but that objective standard is fairly high. I can remember going on calls where people had an elderly relative that they hadn't heard from them, and you know, you want to go in, but you just can't go into everyone's house anytime you want. I'm sure they went out there, they looked into windows, I'm sure they did a reasonable job. This isn't the first, you know, suspicious kind of case like this that they'd investigated, and unfortunately, you know, hindsight being 2020, obviously they would have liked to have gone in there. As you said, who knows what they saw when they looked in there? Who knows when what was taking place inside that house?
Alexis Weed, Nancy Grace producer, joining us tonight from New York. What else did the family see when they looked inside the house?
Jean, like I said before, this cousin of the mother was propped up, looking into a window. They see the son in there first. They also see cell phones strewn on the ground, and that's when the father went back around to the front of the house, kicked in the door, and found his son and the girlfriend lying there, hands bound, bags over their heads.
Whoever did do this
needs to pay.
They planned it because they went to that house with tape and bags. I hope and pray the cops find them before I do.
Listen, ma'am, I am a concerned mother. My son was at Longacre Lane with his girlfriend house sitting. Lisa Straub lives there because her parents went to Puerto Rico 2 days ago. I get a phone call about a half an hour ago from his friend Sharita that some girl named Tiffany called her saying that Johnny and Lisa were supposed to pick her up at 11 o'clock, and she was on the phone with Johnny, my son, when he was walking out of his house, his girlfriend's house with his girlfriend, to come get her. And supposedly she heard a guy in the background screaming at my son, and my son saying, what do you want? Who are you? Get away from us, and what have you. Okay, 4 cop cars were already out at this residence. They're not there, and her car is in the driveway.
I found them, and I ripped off the bag off my son's head.
You found them tied up, with bags around their head.
Then went to her and did the same.
I'm Jean Casares of In Session on the True TV Network, in for Nancy Grace tonight. Thank you for joining us. A young couple in love, planning their lives together, and now they are murdered. Who murdered this young couple? Johnny Clarke, Lisa Straub. Who murdered them? Police are on an all-out search tonight to try to find out who the murderers were of this couple. I want to go straight out to David Lohr, crime reporter for AOL.com, joining us from Ohio tonight. Let's look at this timeline and let's start from the beginning. Everything started around 11 o'clock at night, right?
Yeah, that's correct. 11 o'clock is when the girl spoke with Johnny. For whatever reason, she waited 2 hours to call the mom. She called the mom at 1 a.m. Then the mom calls the police department. The cops go out there. Shortly after that, it's about 20 after 1. As you mentioned, they were on the scene for 11 minutes, left. She called them again around 2. They were there within 10 minutes, left, or stayed for about 30 and then left. And then it was after that that the parents finally went out there on their own. And the third 911 call came in at 4 a.m. after they unfortunately found them deceased inside the home.
All right. Joining us tonight is Lisa Straub's uncle. Joining us, Jim Verbaski, who is joining us from Detroit, Michigan. Jim, thank you for joining us. Now, you had said something before that really struck me. You said that no footprints were found in the snow, so it's believed that the perpetrator or perpetrators entered through the garage.
That's correct. Like I said, we have about a half a foot of snow on the ground here, and there were no fresh footprints anywhere in that house. And the layout of the house is you would enter through the garage. The garage door would have been up. Then you would have entered through the door and then gone right into the kitchen. They did have a security alarm system in the home, but that was deactivated.
Where was their car at the time? Would it have been in the driveway or in the garage?
I believe it was in the driveway.
Do you know if police searched for tire tracks in the snow that were not Johnny's or Lisa's?
I don't know that.
Because if there weren't any footprints in the snow, they had to get to that garage some way. I would think those tire tracks would be extremely valuable to them. Another question I want to ask you, your sister and her husband, Lisa's mother, had planned, I'm sure, for a long time. It was a 25th wedding anniversary cruise that they went on, right?
That's correct. The driveway was dry at the time of this incident. We were kind of between two different snowstorms here. So the driveway was not snow covered at that time, nor were the roads. And yes, Mary Beth and Jeff, they did plan this cruise for several months, obviously, and they left on Friday.
Do you think the perpetrators planned this while they were away, because it would have been much more difficult to have 4 people in the home versus 2?
I would only be speculating if I gave you my opinion, but you know, like I said, this was not one person who did this.
Now, the home was in disarray. That's what we're hearing. When your sister and brother got home, and I know that the cruise stopped to allow them to fly back to Ohio immediately, did they tell you that anything was missing from that home?
When they got home, they arrived in near blizzard conditions here at Detroit, and then drove to Toledo. The following morning, they were interviewed by the local authorities and the FBI. Subsequently, then they ended up going over to their home. They walked through the home with the sheriff deputies and the FBI, and basically what was missing was 2 $20 bills out of a change jar. So this whole ordeal, whoever did this got $40 out of this.
To Catherine Smerling, psychologist, joining us tonight out of New York. I'm trying to find motive here. I'm trying to find out if this was a botched robbery. 2 $20 bills is not a robbery. This is personal.
It certainly does sound like a personal vendetta, and no parent should have to go through what these dear parents are going through right now. My heart's out to all of them. But this does sound like something that was planned, something that was premeditated, and something that was very well organized by people that knew that they were alone.
To C.W. Denson, retired Portland police captain, I've just got to get your take on this. What motive do you see to do this?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me that this whole thing was to be a robbery, burglary, strong arm robbery, getting into the house. It's not a coincidence that the adults, that the parents were gone. I would say that probably the suspects knew that they were going to be gone based on information they got from friends of the victims. And they came there specifically because, A, they thought that no one was there, and maybe they were surprised that the young man and the young lady were there at the time. But I would be very surprised if the suspects weren't known in some way to the victims.
And I'll tell you what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if that friend that immediately went over to the house when she felt something was wrong, if the perpetrators were in some form or fashion still in there, got scared, and didn't take any more than the $20 or $40. I want to go to Dr. Vincent DeMaio, joining us tonight from Bexar County, San Antonio, Texas. He's the former chief medical examiner. And doctor, so many questions, but first of all, beside Lisa was a pool of blood that was found in that home, and beside Johnny there was no blood. Can you explain the blood at all beside that one victim?
She would have had to have been injured prior to being asphyxiated. Maybe she was struck on the head and had a scalp laceration. Because if she had any injury to the head after the plastic bag was put on, it couldn't have gotten out. It would have been contained in the bag.
When the bodies were found, or when the father of Lisa ripped the bag off his daughter to try to see if she could be resuscitated, her face was very cold to the touch. Her body was cold. What does that tell you? This was about, I think, a little after 3 in the morning. What does that tell you about time of death?
Well, usually you can feel a body being cold. It takes about an hour and a half, because, you know, it initially retains that heat. The rest of the time, determination would have to be whether she was in, or she or he were in rigor mortis. That would have been an important analysis.
Is there anything that you can use to determine time of death?
You use a bunch of things, like whether the body is cold, whether the body has stiffened into rigor mortis, but usually your time is very vague. It's, you know, plus or minus, maybe a couple of hours. It would suggest that the couple were dead for at least an hour, maybe 2 hours prior to death, that the body felt cold all over.
And the reason I'm touching on that is when this gets to trial, that can be important to corroborate with phone calls and times and other forensic evidence that they may gather from the scene. To Joey Jackson, defense attorney, there is an all-out search tonight by police to try to find the perpetrators of this. They are going to look for latent prints. What else do you see that may be incriminating to someone you could represent in this case?
Well, certainly, Gene, if there was a struggle here, there would be a full body of DNA all over that place. And as a result of that, it would match the defendant or defendants to the actual crime scene. This is going to be problematic. And finally, as you know, Gene, this is a death penalty jurisdiction. And I certainly would suppose if they catch them, they will apply it.
Rescue squad came, and they went in there. They went in there, and they came out way too quick, and I kept begging them, please, is my son alive? Is my son alive? Is my son alive, Lord? Tell me my son's alive. And he wasn't.
Oh my God. You need to get the police out to Long Acre Lane. My son is in the basement tied up at his house. I just saw him through the window. The police were out here earlier and did absolutely nothing. Both cell phones are on the ground and we can see the people. Him and his girlfriend are tied up in the basement.
Okay, all right, we'll get them out there.
Get them cops out here. I told them earlier. And they wouldn't listen to me.
You need to calm down. We'll get them out there. But yelling at me is
unconscious. They're unconscious, ma'am.
Oh, okay. You said they're unconscious?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
They did not deserve to die. Nobody deserves to die this way. I could see a natural death, but a murder? You're gonna tie somebody up and put bags over their head and tape it around?
Why don't you just go in there and shoot them and leave them alone? They made them suffer. They made them suffer and lose their breath.
We are learning some news right now that search warrants have been executed on that home in Ohio. They found a key with the number 544 stamped on it that was under the body of Lisa. What was that key to? I want to go out to David Lohr, crime reporter, AOL.com, joining us from Ohio. With the release of these search warrant affidavits, what else was collected at the home?
Well, Gene, they seized a number of items. Cell phone parts was listed on there. It said that they were strewn about the home, so it sounds like possibly their cell phones were broken. It says they took a bunch of items from the kitchen area, and these are kind of interesting. They took a Ziploc bag, pieces of white baggies, and digital scales. Some other things included security documents, some foreign currency, and other things like that. But as far as the most interesting thing, I think, is the key you mentioned with 544 stamped on it. I mean, is that a motel key? Is it a locker key? It'll be interesting to see where that key takes investigators. Alexis Weed, Nancy Grace producer, what else can you tell us from these search warrant affidavits?
Right, Jean. They also seized from the home DVDs, cardboard boxes, like David said, currency, Iraqi currency, as well as currency from other countries. They took DNA swabs. And, Gene, we also know that a lot of the items in the home were overturned when police finally came in and searched the home.
You just have to wonder if they were searching for something they couldn't find. The warrant also describes black, pink interband pants under the neck, and the wrists were taped together, but not her ankles. We're talking about Lisa right now, but Johnny Clarke's ankles were taped. So he had more duct tape on him. Maybe he was tougher to fight off, and so they duct taped his ankles too. We're taking your calls live. Julie in North Carolina. Hi, Julie.
Hello.
Thank you for calling. What's your question?
Hello. I'm an interrogator, and I know that they're going to have a field day with this friend that didn't call for 2 hours. I wanted to know what her motivation was to not call 911, because she said she felt that there was something wrong when she called the mom, but she could have saved their lives. And my question is I was wondering how far away she was supposed to be when she made the call and she heard them talking over the phone, and how long it's going to take for them to get the zings off the tower to see if she was actually, at a faraway distance.
Boy, Julie, you are a great interrogator. Jim Verbosky joining us tonight, who is Lisa Straub's uncle from Detroit, Michigan. Do we know why this friend took 2 hours to call another friend who then called the family?
Actually, we don't. We know that we know what you know. We really prior to 6 o'clock in the morning, Lisa's side of the family, our side of the family, we had no inkling that anything was even going on. I got up that morning to check the weather at 6 o'clock, and our local news station was bringing the story live. That's kind of how we found out about it.
Gee, what a way to find out. C.W. Jensen, retired police chief, joining us from Portland, Oregon. The pings, this friend that didn't call for 2 hours, authorities. In fact, she never really called authorities. She just called a friend who called the family. The pings of where she was and when she went over to that home, that's critical to this investigation.
Right. It's interesting, we have the story that she had this strange phone call and then made a series of phone calls to tell other people about this. Did that actually happen? Who knows? So I think that that's what they'll be looking at, her cell phone records. They're going to be looking at to see where she was, what a normal person would do in that situation. If they go to the house and see something wrong, they would call the police, they would wait for the police, and when the officers got there, that person would articulate to the officers why they thought it was ransacked in the house. Because I don't know how everybody else may have their house clean or unkept. So it would have been critical for her and normal for anyone to wait for the police. And so I'm sure that they're looking at her story very closely.
To Melissa in Illinois. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Jane. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome. Thank you for calling.
I agree with you that this seems like a very personal crime. Robbers typically don't want to run into people in a home. And with her car parked in the driveway, they would have known that someone was there. Did either the young man or the young woman have anybody that was romantically interested in them, that was, you know, scorned or felt put off and would have done something?
It's a good question. I think this is a developing case. It is in its infancy. That's a question investigators will look at tonight. CNN Heat.